Today we're going to jump into chapter 9, and chapter 9 deals with, the first half deals with Islam, the second half deals with, once again, Christianity. Okay, and as I said when I went into the origins of Christianity and, of course, whatever other religious group we're looking at, no offense, okay, but we are looking strictly at the historical nature of this, okay? I don't mean to insult your faith, and I'm not going to touch on, theology, but strictly the historical facts as we know them, okay? And so, Islam actually starts in what today would be considered Saudi Arabia, okay? But before Islam, looking at that entire area, there is no central government. Basically, the Arabic people were made up of different groups. They were divided by tribes or by clans. Clans are more like family-based, okay? Whether it's like, cousins and second cousins and people marry into it. Tribes are just a larger extension of that. Bless you. Maybe there's no direct blood relation, but there is a commonality. Okay, Arabia is pretty isolated as far as geography goes. It's on what we call a peninsula. It's surrounded by water, and so there was no civilization rising up the way we see in Mesopotamia or India or Egypt. Okay, and of course, when it comes to its geography, part of it has mountains, okay? Most of it is desert, and not just any desert, but horrible, awful, hot desert, okay? There's a portion of Arabia towards the south, known as the Empty Quarter, because there's literally nothing. It is just sand, like not even vegetation, okay? So it's just empty desert. And of course, no rivers whatsoever. And while it is surrounded by water, number one, obviously it's salt water, so it's not like you can take, at least not at this time, you can't take salt water and try to farm with it, okay? So you're not doing that, but there's only 2 harbors, like in most of the peninsula, where ships could actually dock and, bring in other stuff. So needless to say, it wasn't, the most habitable place. And so this is just like a satellite imagery of the Arabian Peninsula. This is the Empty Quarter right there, where literally there's nothing, just sand, all right? No, not even like, shrubbery or whatnot. And of course, they've superimposed the modern day countries that are in that area. Most of it is Saudi Arabia, but you do have Yemen, Oman, Qatar, and a couple other places. Okay, now, that's not to say that there weren't civilizations or groups, but most of those were along the western side because this is where it was easiest to trade with Egypt. And this was kind of the easiest where ships could land. And obviously, this is where those really good harbors were. Okay, so you do have different societies existing, but nothing like most of the areas around it. Okay, now continuing on. All right. Obviously, most of the groups that are in Arabia before Islam are polytheistic. Okay, that's just ancient world. That was just the norm. Okay, remember your exceptions: the Israelites, the Jewish people, Zoroastrian, and then later on Christianity. Okay, now around 70 A.D. Okay, and I'm sorry, that should not be there. It should be CE. All right, I'm gonna have to go back and change that. We don't like using anything anymore. Too Christmas-centric. Okay, CE, the Common Era. All right, we begin to see displaced Jewish people coming to Arabia. All right. Now, what ended up happening, and I briefly mentioned it when we were talking about Rome, the Jewish people rose up in rebellion. the Romans came in and put it down, destroyed Jerusalem, and basically began to spread the Jewish people to different parts of their empire. Those that weren't captured or managed to escape before the Romans arrived, the closest area for them to go to is Arabia. Okay? And so, we begin to see then the introduction of monotheism. All right? Now, obviously, none of the Arabic people convert to Judaism, but they become aware that, hey, there's some groups out there, believe it or not, that only believe in one God. Radical idea. Okay? Later on, when Ethiopians begin to kind of migrate into the area and trade and later on invade parts of it, Ethiopians are Christian. Okay? And just let me back up really quick. Okay? Ethiopia is down here. Okay? So they had pretty easy access to Arabia. And when Christianity originally spread, it spread to Egypt, it spread into what today would be modern-day Sudan, and eventually into Ethiopia, okay? And for the longest time, this is just another little tidbit, Ethiopia was one of the only Christian areas in Africa up until Christian missionaries began arriving in the 17 and 1800s. Okay, so they brought Christianity to the Arabian Peninsula. Once again, people aren't converting really, but now they're like, oh yeah, there's other people out there that only believe in one God. And then of course, when they encounter the Persians, Persians are Zoroastrian, and so once again, they're like, oh, here's another group that only believes in one God. Okay, so the point here being is that pre-Islam, many people on the Arabian Peninsula had already been exposed to monotheism, even though they didn't follow it. Okay, now, once again, there is no central government. Okay, everything is ruled by various tribes. You do have little warlords controlling different areas. Once again, they all control a little strip of land. But eventually a city rises up, the city of Mecca, and even though it's not a capital by any extent of the word, it does become the largest city in the area, and it does become a center for trade, for worship. Whoever owns the city, that's where they have their government, and so on. And of course, for the people that are traveling through Arabia, because it is such a desolate place, it becomes where every traveler basically either rests, buys their supplies, or that tends to be their goal. All right? And so, once again, as I said, we are strictly looking at this from an historical perspective. Okay? And I will apologize because I can't, I'll probably butcher this. Muhammad ibn Abd Allah, all right? We just call him Muhammad, all right, for easier, okay, is born in Mecca around the year 570. Okay, that's the best estimate we can come up with. Okay, he is a member of the Quraysh tribe. You don't need to know that unless you plan on studying more of this. So he's a member of a particular tribe. They are kind of important, okay? Although his family, his clan, isn't quite. So they're like a lesser important part of a kind of important tribe, okay? Now, as far as we know, and from the various historical records, we know that he worked on various caravans. He was basically a businessman, a trader, and he went up and down the Arabian Peninsula, okay? That was his job. And so basically, trading from one end to the other, okay, for other people, okay? When he's 25, all right, he's not a dumb guy. He is kind of smart. He ends up marrying his boss. And now don't get weird ideas. It was a woman, okay? Arabian women did have, we'll talk about this. At the time, they do have a little bit more power and a little bit more liberty than women in other societies for the era, okay? Her name is Khadijah, and she's a widow. And when her husband died, she inherited his business, okay? And it was a very successful business. And once again, no offense to anyone who's Muslim, but, seems kind of like a smart move. If you're young, you're 25, you're healthy, and here's this older lady who has inherited a business and is very wealthy, it's like, hey, how you doing? And so he ends up marrying her, okay? And so because, as the man, then he takes over the business, and by all accounts, okay, once again, he's a very responsible businessman. He actually grows it and is very successful. As far as the historical records say, he was an honest businessman. He was very trustworthy, so that's what we know about his life. The other thing that we learn is that he was a very spiritual person, and that oftentimes he goes into the mountains on his own to pray, to meditate, to receive some kind of enlightenment. Okay? So that's your basic background on Muhammad. All right? What happens? Okay? When he's about 40, in the year 610 CE, he's on one of these trips that he takes into the mountains to pray and to meditate. And according to him, all right, he has a vision on this particular excursion, okay, where the archangel Gabriel comes to him and gives him a message from God, okay? Now, as an FYI, and this is something I wish more Americans understood, okay, the Arabic word for God is Allah, all right? So it's not like it's a separate name or a different God. It's the same God if you are either Jewish or Christian or whatever. It's the same God y'all worship. It's just the Arabic word for I don't want to say him, I don't want to say her, let's say it. Okay, them, thank you. It's the Arabic word, okay? Because God could, I don't know. Anyways, and so in this case, he gets this message, okay, where he is called to be his prophet, his messenger. And then, of course, he gets, a couple other things like, you need to be a good person, number one. There really are no other gods. All those other gods that people worship, they're all fake. It's all like just statues or paintings or, whatever. Okay, so, you have to, follow me. And, of course, part of what God wants everyone to do is to care for those less fortunate. Care for, the poor, the hungry, the homeless, the widows, all of that. Okay? And so, Muhammad comes back from this journey, and he begins to teach this message that he received from Gabriel. Now, a lot of what he teaches, a lot of what he goes around preaching is very similar to other monotheistic, religions. Christianity, at least if you believe in Jesus and his original words, be nice, be kind, turn the other cheek, blessed be the meek and the whatevers, and, all of that other stuff, okay? Judaism, same thing. Zoroastrianism, you have to make good choices, otherwise you'll be judged in the next life. So the message isn't, all that different, okay? And so basically, according to the records, Gabriel had told Muhammad that because of this similarity, he needs to go out and preach to other Arabs first, okay? Because remember, most Arabs are polytheistic. So number one, we've got to get them to give up this worship of false gods, okay? Now, as far as those other groups go, and this is if you think back to when we looked at the old Israelite religion, both Jewish people and Christians are what Islam calls people of the book, Okay, they all come from the same basic belief. It's just that, okay, in the thousands of years of Judaism, okay, and by now it's been about 600 years of Christianity, that message has been corrupted. That message has been changed to the point where Muhammad's mission is to bring the complete word of God to everyone. Okay, because he needs to fix the things that have gone wrong with those other two monotheistic religions, and of course, he needs to fix the other Arabic people who are still worshiping different gods. Okay, and so Islam considers Muhammad to be like the last of all of the messengers that God has called. Okay, and in this case, Islam does acknowledge, for those of you who are Jewish or for those of you who are Christian, they do acknowledge all of those other, people, all of those other, I want to say characters, but all of those other people, like Moses and Jesus and whatnot, but they consider them to be prophets. They consider them to be teachers, and Muhammad is the last one. Okay, Jesus had a good message, but in the 600 years that since he taught, y'all have kind of messed it up. And yes, Moses was sent by God, and Moses was a good teacher, but in the, 5,000 years since God sent him, y'all have messed up the message just a little bit. So now here's Muhammad then with the complete message without all of the mistakes that have crept in over time. Okay, and so that's the basic foundation of Islam. All right, now, despite everything that he did, Muhammad was illiterate. He didn't know how to read and write. Okay, and so everything that he said, okay, that happened to him is written down by scribes. Okay, eventually, all right, his scribes, as they're like collecting all of the things that he's telling them, okay, they eventually like bring them together into what's known as the Quran, which is the Muslim holy book. Okay, similar to the Bible or Jewish writings or whatever, it wasn't actually written by Muhammad. All right, it was other people that wrote it and put it together. Okay, so, it's not like he sat down and was like, part one, this is what I saw. Okay, now, unlike some of, and once again, I was raised Christian, so it's the thing that I'm most familiar with. At least the Old Testament is organized almost chronologically. Okay, the Quran is not. The Quran is organized by length. And so the preachings of Muhammad, the shortest one is first. The longest one is at the end. Okay? So if you're trying to get like a chronological history, you're just going to mess yourself up. All right? Because it's arranged by length. It's not even arranged by topic. Okay, and so once the Quran is spread amongst the people, all right, people begin to read it and are like, yeah, this stuff makes sense. This stuff, really should be something that we should all be doing. Okay, in a way, it's very similar to Confucius's writings, or not his writings, but Confucius's teachings. Okay, people read it and are like, yeah, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime, type of thing.
Is it short-term or long-term?
I apologize. I fallen short. You're right. I should read my own notes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, one of the things that it does do, and this is something that Professor Santos can appreciate from a linguistic standpoint, because I do enjoy languages. It's standardized Arabic. All right. The different tribes spoke, different dialects of it, and there was nothing written down in pure Arabic to preserve the language. And so because the Quran is such an important part of the religion, it preserves this ancient form of Arabic and this classical form of Arabic. And even today, if you're Muslim but you're not Arabic, you still know a little bit of Arabic, just enough to be able to worship and to be able to, partake in certain things. Okay, so in that sense, it has preserved the Arabic language in a pure form, one would say. Okay, now this doesn't mean that there aren't other translations of the Quran, but like any translation, it's always better when you read it in the original. I don't expect you to learn Arabic for this, or learn ancient Greek so you can read the New Testament, or Aramaic so you can read the Old Testament or whatever. But it does preserve those languages. Okay, and so the name of this religion then is given as Islam. Islam is just an Arabic word which means submission to God. Okay, that's all. All right, so it's not named after Muhammad or whatever. Okay, and so since Muhammad is from Mecca, he begins to preach. Okay, because hey, he just got visited by an angel. He's going to go share everything that he learned. Okay, but most people in Mecca reject him. Okay, they see him as a threat. Okay, because what's this whole be nice to people and give to the poor and all that other shit? No way. I work hard. This is my money. All right, so they're not going to listen to him. In addition, okay, remember, most of the people are polytheistic, and they're like, hey, we'll pray to your God, but don't ask us to leave our gods behind. I mean, that's the beauty of polytheism. You got one God, two God, three God, four God, five God. Hey, why not? Just add another one just in case. All right? It's and of course, no offense, monotheists. All right? Monotheists tend to get offended by that. It's like, no, one God, that's it. Otherwise, you go to hell. No, you want a couple of things. And so, Muhammad's basically like, okay, yeah, this isn't going very well. And of course, the more he preaches, the more, the other tribes see him as a threat. People begin to intimidate him. He begins to lose business, and so basically he makes the decision that, this isn't going to work, all right? People aren't ready to hear this message from God, okay? And so, in 622, all right, so it's been about, he's been preaching about 10 years without any success, okay? There's another city in Arabia called Medina, okay? And they send a message to Muhammad to come. Now, he's gotten a reputation as being someone who's wise, and of course, he's teaching this stuff that totally makes sense, and so basically what they do is they invite him to their city, not to preach Islam, but to be the judge in certain disputes. Okay, we've got people, we need an impartial judge, and you have a reputation of being pretty smart and pretty fair, and this message that you're teaching, kind of like, not too bad. So could you make this judgment? Okay, and so he does that, and of course, while he's there, he's like, oh, by the way, you want to know how I got so smart and so wise? Well, let me tell you. And so then he begins to teach them about Islam and the message and his vision and stuff like that. And he is much more successful in Medina. Okay, in Medina, people accept his message. People convert to Islam. Okay, and pretty soon the entire city, is following this new religion. Has given up polytheism, okay? And so, what happens on September 24th, the year 622, this is the beginning of the Muslim lunar calendar. This is what dictates, their different celebrations and how things are measured. If you want to think of it this way, it's not exactly the same, but that's their year zero, okay? Because that is when, and it's known as the Hijra, Muhammad leads his followers this is when Muhammad went from Mecca to Medina. Okay. This is where he has his first success. This is where he gets converts. So to him, this is the beginning, and I use air quotes for that, of like Islam, of like the importance of this message. Okay? And like I said, it's kind of interesting because the Arabic people in Medina, the polytheists, they are willing to give up their many gods and follow Muhammad and his new religion. Okay? The Jewish people that live there, though, they're like, no way. You're completely wrong. All right? I don't care if you think we're worshiping the same God. Okay? We can't have these two different religions. So, Muhammad had thought that amongst monotheists, he would have more success because they already accept the fact that there's only one God. But it turns out that they're the toughest to convince, whereas the polytheistic people, whom he had no success with in Mecca, they accept his message. Okay? So, we have Muhammad then with this. Now, because of this Jewish resistance, because the Jewish people are unwilling to accept his message, all right, Muhammad, according to the records, receives another visitation, okay? And this is where, he's already told them, but Jewish people, we're all people of the book. Like we're all worshiping the same God. It's just that in my language, it's a different word, and in your language, it's a different word, okay? And so in this new message that he gets, he's told that Abraham, and so you got to go all the way back, okay? If you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, okay, everybody believes in Abraham, all right? He had somehow, on his various journeys, because remember, he's originally from Mesopotamia before he goes to what today is Palestine. Apparently, it's not in the Jewish record. Somewhere along the way, he makes a detour into Mecca, all right, into Saudi Arabia, and he builds what's called the Kaaba Shrine. After building that, then he does his whole thing. He goes, to Palestine and the story of Abraham. Now, if you don't know it, well, you got signposts here, okay? Abraham, he had a wife, her name was Sarah, okay? But supposedly she was barren. She could not have children, okay? And, it was like a thing of honor to have a son to inherit all of your stuff, okay? And so what Sarah does is she has a handmaiden, Hagar, sorry, I had to remember that name. It's been a while since I've been in Sunday school. And so, she gives her servant to her husband and says, Abraham, because I can't have babies, have sex with my servant and have a baby with her, and that will be our baby. Okay? And so he does. Okay, I'll give you a good husband. All right? When your wife gives you a side piece, then you take it. Has a baby with her. All right? And this baby is Ishmael. Okay? And so for a couple years, Ishmael is the son. Ishmael is going to have whatever. At some point, by some miracle, even though Sarah had been declared, you're never going to have kids. Plus, if you read the Old Testament, the Bible says that she was like 98 years old or some crazy shit like that. She ends up getting pregnant. All right, I know, miracle. And she has a son named Isaac. Okay? And so now it's like, Sarah's like, well, Ishmael's just your son from the side piece. Isaac is your son from your actual wife. Okay, so obviously he takes precedence. And so what ends up happening is because Sarah is so jealous, Abraham throws Hagar out from the house along with Ishmael. And so they, get the fuck out. We don't want you anymore. And she's gone. Okay, well, according to Muhammad, then, the Arab people are descended from Abraham through Ishmael, through this child that he had with Sarah's servant. And of course, the Jewish people are descended from Abraham through Isaac, through the son that he had with his legal wife. Okay, so Muhammad's basically like, okay, like Jewish people, I know you're not accepting my message, but deep down, we're cousins. Okay, yeah, I mean, come on, everyone, cousins are your first best friends growing up, right? Maybe it's like, no, they're not. We're still family. We're still the same group of people. It doesn't actually work. Okay, a lot of the Jewish people are like, yeah, no, that's bullshit. We don't believe you. Okay, of course, it doesn't help that along with that message, Muhammad's like, yeah, the reason why you have to accept what I'm saying is because, okay, you guys have corrupted the old Jewish religion in the 5,000-6,000 years since Abraham was called, and the Christians since Jesus was here, in the last 600 years, you've corrupted that message. And so I'm bringing like the pure message as it should be, okay? And so yeah, like Islam will absorb, Judaism and Christianity, okay? And so, it doesn't quite work. Jewish people, Christians, they don't exactly convert to Islam, but all of the Arabic people do, and they begin to follow him. And suddenly Medina becomes an actual really good city because they begin to follow this message of peace and harmony and all of this stuff that Muhammad is teaching. Bless you, whoever sneezed. Okay, but yeah, this is how, both Jews and Christians and Muslims are considered people of the book, and they trace at least their spiritual lineage all the way back to Abraham. Okay, for those who are Jewish and, Arabic, or if you're like Israelite or Arabic, you're technically cousins, according to this. Okay, now, what Muhammad then begins to do is that, okay, now that we're all, Muslim, and we've seen that other groups are not going to accept, we need to combine and form what is called an ummah. Okay, this is basically an all Muslim community. We need to kind of insulate ourselves from these outside influences. Okay, and in this case, if we are in this ummah, we will be able better to practice our beliefs. Okay, and at the time, now I realize that the Islam of today has a lot of other rules and a lot of other things that go along with it. Just like Christianity, okay, it's way different from what Jesus and Paul first taught, okay? But when Islam is founded, okay, this is basically the only requirements, okay, for you to become Muslim, okay? Number one, you have to bear witness, okay? There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, you have to truly believe that. All right. Number two, you have to pray 5 times a day. Okay, and if you have any Muslim friends who are really, really devout, yes, they will pray 5 times a day. Okay, so prayers 5 times a day. Number two, you need to give alms to the poor. You do need to give money, time, food, whatever. You need to somehow help poor people out. We literally just ended this a couple weeks ago, or I want to say a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. I know it was on a Wednesday. During Ramadan, no food during daylight hours. So if you had Muslim friends, while the sun was out, they were not eating or drinking anything. They could eat and drink before the sun rose. They could eat and drink after the sun set. But during that time, nope, okay? And it's for 30 days. Okay, so for 30 days, you're basically not eating during daylight hour. The one that everyone also giggles at is also no sex, all right, during that month. So, if your Muslim friends were feeling a little, that's why, okay? Kella's laughing. Yeah, they were. Yes, that's why, okay? And then the last one is you have to make a trip to Mecca at least once in your lifetime. Okay. Now, I'm told that this is one that a lot of people are able to kind of forgive-ish, more because of today's current political situation. Depending on which country you're from, you may not always be able to go to Saudi Arabia, and do that pilgrimage. In addition, if you are very, very poor, it's not as if, like during this time you could, no offense, hop on a camel or on a caravan and go and you're there. Airfare is expensive, hotels are expensive, and all this other stuff. So this is one that, people, if they do it, they save up for the longest time, or it's one that I could never save enough money. Plus, I live in a country where politically, I can't get the necessary permits or passports or visas to be able to do it. But if you want to be Muslim, basically, this is it. If you're willing to do that, then you're in. Okay. Now, once again, I realize that today it's a lot different. Okay, but this is the original 5 pillars of Islam. Okay. Now, with his followers at Medina, with his ummah, with this now collective society, he attempts to go to Mecca and convert them again. Okay. Unfortunately, the people of Mecca aren't receptive to his message. And so it actually becomes a war, a physical war between the cities of Medina and the city of Mecca. Okay? Even though the city of Mecca is larger and more powerful, they are unable to defeat Muhammad. Okay? And so the people of Mecca see this as, maybe he is right, and maybe he does have favor from this God, and the other gods that we've been worshiping are fake, all right? And his is the real God, okay? And so, he leads this pilgrimage to to Mecca, okay? Not only do the people of Medina follow him, but he begins to get support from most of the Arab tribes, okay? And so in 630, he's able to enter Mecca peacefully, okay? And the people of Mecca accept his message. They took it as a divine sign that, yes, maybe there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. Okay, of course, he doesn't live for very long. He does unite all of the tribes of Arabia, and in the year 632, he dies. Okay, he passes away. All right, so what happens next? Okay, well, let me take a step back. Why did people then convert to Islam after rejecting him for so long? Okay, well, number one, as I mentioned, the 5 pillars are actually pretty easy to keep when you think about it. Number one, you just declare that, Allah is the one true God and Muhammad is his prophet. Okay? You don't even have to get baptized or get thrown water at you. All right? That's basically it. It's like when Christians tell you, just accept Jesus in your heart. Boom, I'm there. Okay? Type of thing. Praying 5 times a day, when you think about it, it's not, it is a lot, but not the hardest thing to do, I suppose. Okay. I guess I can give, spare change to the poor, or, buy somebody a meal that I see that needs it. Okay. The fasting during Ramadan, that one is hard, but some of them, I guess you have to have at least one hard one there. And then going to Mecca at least once in your life. Now you got to remember, this is like 1,400 years ago, a lot easier than and even today, I suppose, if you're American, you could probably do it, or, especially if you're wealthy and, you get on a plane and you go and whatnot, okay? Number 2, it's easy to understand. You don't really have to explain a lot of things about it, okay? Try to explain the Trinity to, if you're Catholic, to a non-Catholic, or, try to explain some other stuff about Christianity. So it's not, it's not all that hard. Pray 5 times a day. Seriously, those tres, that's it, whatever. This is probably one of the biggest things for people. There is no pope, there is no patriarch, there is no central leader that you have to follow. Yes, you do come together. Yes, you do worship with others. Yes, there are certain leaders, but there isn't a pope that you have to obey. There isn't like whatever, okay? Because one of the beliefs is that Muhammad is the last of all the prophets. So nobody comes after him. That's it. You don't need, John Paul II or, Francis or whoever it is today, type of thing, okay? Everything should be between you and God, all right? Just that relationship, and as long as you're good with that, boom, you're set, okay? And so one of the things that happens then in Arabia post-Islam is that, number one, all of the Arabic people are united now, okay, through one religious belief. All of the old wars and blood feuds, because that's very typical when you have like clans and whatnot. Okay, Luca's grandfather killed my grandfather, so now like we're still mad at each other, so like, we're gonna do stuff to each other, and our children and our grandchildren will keep fighting. Well, all of that ends, okay? No more, okay, because they're united by one spiritual belief. Okay, and so with these changes then, we see Arabia becoming united. Now, that doesn't mean everything's perfect, okay? Because we do end up with a political question, all right? Once again, Muhammad is the last religious leader. So Islam technically has, like I said, no prophet, no pope, no whatever. Okay, so nobody comes after him. But politically, who's going to be the ruler? Who is going to rule over all of these united Arabic tribes? Okay, because before, remember, they were all separated by clan and family. All right, so who's the most important one? Okay, now. What ends up happening is a man named Abu Bakr, who is Muhammad's father-in-law, okay, he becomes the new political leader, okay? Not religion-wise, you're kind of on your own, which is the way it's supposed to be, okay? So prophet in your, God in your heart, 5 times a day, don't eat during Ramadan, be nice to poor people, all of that stuff. All right, that's all on you, all right? But politically, Abu Bakr is in charge, okay? And he assumes, or he's given the title Caliph. The word Caliph means successor to the prophet, okay? And so we end up, for now, this unified Arabic people are known as a caliphate, okay? And yes, while Abu Bakr is the political head, by extension, he also has to be a good Muslim. He has to set a good example. And much of the political stuff is, a part of their political stuff, or, the religious stuff, is part of their political stuff, because that's what brought them together. Okay, it wasn't like, hey tribes, let's unite, we can be friends. No, it was because they all came to convert to the same religion. So yeah, you do have to mix so even though people say, and once again, no offense to any Muslim in here, even though people say there was nobody after Muhammad, the Caliph kind of still had religious influence and still dictated, because the political laws were heavily influenced by the religious beliefs. Okay? Now, after Abu Bakr dies, there's 3 more caliphs, okay? So with him, there's 4 that Islam believes were the right ones, that they were guided by Allah, that they were doing everything that Muhammad would have done if Muhammad had still been alive. Okay, so for about 100 years, 150 years, things are cool, things are okay. All right, people are following the Caliph. Okay, now, and this is something that any faith that believes itself to be the only true faith, once again, no offense, monotheists, they tend to believe that it is their responsibility to convert everybody else. Okay, because I have the truth and Tori is wrong. So it's my job to make her come to what I believe. And so, because the caliphate was like a political and spiritual entity, okay, as they expanded and conquered other areas, they did have, their religion there as well, okay? And in English, okay, the word jihad is translated as holy war because this is what it was called, but it's not as I want to say sinister as the translation would lead you to believe, because the word jihad can also be used as to mean a striving or a struggle. So if you have like any kind of personal struggles, or you're trying to better yourself, all right, that could be considered a jihad, a personal jihad. All right, I'm trying to overcome this generational trauma. So that's like a personal thing. I'm trying to overcome these feelings of anxiety and worthlessness or whatever, okay? Then yes, that becomes your own jihad, all right, type of thing, okay? So it's not just like a military thing, it's also that personal struggle that each of us go through. And if you don't, yay for you, all right? And if you do, then join the club, all right? Because I think all of us do, all right? And most of that is, for a reason, personal, all right? It's not something that always comes out, okay? And so unfortunately, though, because of this mistranslation, all right, people get the idea that oh, fuck, this is like a very violent and warlike religion, when maybe all Mahalia was talking about was her own, anxiety that she has, that she struggles against, but they hear the word jihad, and they're like, yeah, Mahalia is violent. Like, she just wants to go out and fight everything. No, she's just trying to fight her own interpersonal demons, not, Jose type of thing, and so yeah, this is where we get that misunderstanding. Okay. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that they aren't actually out there conquering. All right. And so, basically, this is when the Byzantine Empire begins to collapse. It takes it a long time, but this is the beginning, because they do lose Egypt, they do lose land in the Middle East, they do lose Mesopotamia. Well, they don't, but both Mesopotamia and Persia are conquered, and so pretty soon these areas then are converted to Islam, okay? And so just so you see, the green area is everything that was united when Muhammad was alive. So in the like 10 years that he was preaching, he brought most of Arabia, or at least most of the populated parts of Arabia together. In the last 2 years of his life, he consolidated everything at Mecca. All right. After he died, his followers, the other, caliphs, they expanded throughout all of Saudi Arabia. And then everything that you see in brown, that's what was part of the Byzantine Empire. So they lost Egypt, they lost Palestine, they lost parts of Syria, they lost parts of Turkey, they lost, a good portion of North Africa. All right, so the Byzantines, begin a rather quick downfall. And in addition, these were Persian areas. They conquer Persia, they conquer Mesopotamia, and then, Islam will keep on expanding after that, okay? Now, just to finish off for the day, okay, the last of those four caliphs is a man named Ali, okay? When he dies, we end up with a power vacuum, with a power struggle, because nobody knows who should take over, because there is no direct family left that people could trace to Muhammad. Okay, and so yes, even though the clans had given up their blood feuds and their wars against each other, they were still like, okay, yeah, we're all Arab, we're all Muslim, but I'm still part of the Santos clan, okay? And I can't remember Mahalia's last name, but that's the Mahalia clan, all right, and then the Jose clan, all right, so we're still like our own groups. I mean, we're all united, we love each other, right, all right, but we're still part of different families, and so the Umayyad clan, the Umayyad family, they take over, okay, and they have a completely different idea of what all of this should be. So number one, they move the capital to Damascus. So it goes from Mecca to Damascus. Now, Mecca is still the spiritual capital, but the political capital moves to Damascus. The next caliph, it's no longer like, okay, who can we find that's kind of related to Muhammad? It now becomes hereditary, okay? So that father to son, father to son, father to son, okay? Which it hadn't been before, all right? Yes, they were family of the prophet, of Muhammad, but now we're going direct, father, son, like a kingship, okay? Now that they have conquered areas where non-Arabs live, okay, we begin to see I don't know what to call it, like racism or classism or colorism or ethnicism. Thank you. Where only Arab people are being promoted to the highest levels of government, and the non-Arab people that are being brought in, they're kind of relegated to the lower classes. So yeah, I guess this could be a classism thing, but it's limited strictly by, are you Arabic or are you not? Okay, so we begin to see those issues now begin to rise up. All right, we'll stop right